Welcome, welcome, everybody. Thanks for downloading another episode of Wigs for Wigs. I'm Joe Cook, joined once again by Bill Venezia, and we're going to be diving in again to some politics here. The 2024 presidential election season is apparently upon us already. God, this is going to be long. But just recently, Nikki Haley announced her run for the Republican nomination. We had some other businessman, I can't even remember his name, also announced he's running as a Republican.
Oh, you mean the former president?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I wasn't referring to him, but some other guy announced. And then, yeah, there's him also. But we're going to be diving in, talking about looking ahead to 2024, this long campaign season we have ahead of us, speculating again about who might be jumping in, what we might be looking forward to. And maybe we'll take a dive back at some past presidential candidates who either rose or more likely collapsed. Howard Dean and his screaming and all in this episode. So stick around. We'll be right back after this ad to dive in and talk about presidential candidates. All right, we are back here on Wigs for Wigs. Bill, welcome back.
How you doing, Joe? You know, this is really early to be talking about 2024, but it is upon us.
Yeah, these election seasons get longer and longer each time.
The game's afoot. I mean, it's interesting to note with the Republicans that Trump went out on with the lead. The unannounced candidate from Florida, DeSantis.
Meatball?
Well, I wouldn't say that.
DeSanctimonious?
DeSanctimonious, meatball, whatever Trump decides to call him.
Establishment, I think, was the new one.
Well, I think he's trying to avoid the slings and arrows of the former president, Donald Trump, and I think he wants to avoid the fire that will come his way. So he is actually on a book tour, and it's interesting. I read some excerpts from it. While Trump actually has garnered now on the Fox poll, which I find very interesting, they've gone full tilt for DeSantis, and they tried to distance themselves from Trump. I don't feel a lot of empathy for Trump, but the truth of the matter is he's actually 15 points ahead of DeSantis in the Fox News poll, which is not that publicized. And it'll be interesting to see tomorrow when they have the CPAC convention, which Trump is they're going to be the last speaker. Also at the CPAC is Nikki Haley, who that'll be interesting to see how she's, what type of a response she gets from the CPAC audience, which normally is a pretty raucous group. That'll be interesting. And DeSantis is not attending. I don't think he wants to basically, again, be subjected to the fire that he will receive from Donald Trump.
So, Ron DeSantis, can we agree he's running for president?
Absolutely.
I mean, you don't come out with a book at this time.
And plan to visit South Carolina and Iowa,
Right.
and New Hampshire.
I don't know about you. I can't stand this whole denialism that these presidential candidates go through every 4 years. It's like you're coming out with a book. You're in Iowa. There's no reason to go to Iowa for anybody unless you're running for president.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's that he is trying to limit his negative exposure because with the base, you know that he's going to basically be flayed by Donald Trump in terms of being, his character will get assassinated. And I think he's trying to delay that. But the truth of the matter is, if you're going to run against the giant, you have to slay the giant. And until he's ready to come out in the open and do battle, because it is going to be dirty, then, how is he going to fare in a general election?
Well, he has to take on real evil right now, like the Disney Corporation.
Oh, not like book banning?
That too. Books, Disney, it's awful out there.
It's ironic. The way DeSantis portrays it, he's trying to protect your freedoms by denying your freedoms. So
That's typically how it's framed when people do that.
yeah, I mean, well, it's a typical authoritarian playbook, Come up with these horrible scenarios and a simple solution for it, I wonder if he'll be wearing a AK-47 pin.
Because that's no. What is it?
The National Rifle?
The national not the AK-47. What was it that George Santos
Oh,
proposed?
yes,
The M4 or whatever.
whatever, it's some automatic rifle.
Because why shouldn't we have an automatic, a national gun? He said.
To me, as interesting as this race is shaping up, and by the way, Mike Pence will not be speaking at CPAC,
No.
because I don't think Mike Pence will be received there. You will hear
Because he doesn't want to get hanged.
he doesn't want to get hanged, plain and simple.
Perfectly natural human reaction.
I don't know, is Ted Cruz going down there for his annual rant? I wonder.
I haven't seen his name brought up, but I would be surprised if he's not.
Yeah.
That's his crowd. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. I caught his act a little bit with the hearings, the last hearings with Merrick Garland.
Is he going to run this time?
It'd be interesting to see. I think that he'll test the waters. I also believe that, I don't know what Chris Christie's thinking is, because Chris Christie in most polls didn't even poll 1%. Larry Hogan from Maryland, from that wing of the Republican Party, if there is a Republican Party, he's made some noise. John Sununu, is it John or Chris? What's his name? The governor of New Hampshire, Chris. His dad was John Sununu. Yeah. Is he going to run? Another.
I think he would be a good one if he were to get in.
Yeah, he's sane.
We never Trump Republicans, sane Republicans. I think Chris Sununu is a good candidate. I know New Hampshire's not a Goliath of a state, but he's been a successful governor there.
And he had a very successful governor for a father, as well as a chief of staff.
Well, association with the Bush family isn't what it used to be in the Republican Party.
But for that wing of the Republican Party.
For my old wing of the Republican Party,
yeah.
whatever's left of that is...
And I mean, I really, I think that Nikki Haley
I'd say Hogan has disappointed me a little bit recently. Yeah. He's been very timid about, straightforwardly calling out that there was no voter fraud, that's all a bunch of hooey.
Yeah.
He's kind of backed down, which makes me think he's about to announce he's running for president.
It could be. It could be, because he has to move a little bit to the right of where he is. I think the interesting people, being Nikki Haley.
Yeah, who's actually interesting on the Republican side?
I think Nikki Haley is running for vice president.
I think the same thing.
I think Carrie Lake thinks that she'll be vice president. And
loser. I'm just going to make a sting of that sound from Jim Carrey for if Carrie Lake actually gets in the race, that I can.
Well,
if you listen to that episode after she lost, when
I think that
brought back Jim Carrey's loser.
She's definitely running for vice president, and she's hoping that Trump will be that person.
Yeah, she's speaking at CPAC.
And Marjorie Taylor Greene, don't forget her. That would be, well, I tell you what, we would have a lot of grist for podcasts if that transpires. And I don't know if that could transpire, but Nikki Haley makes some sense. And if you've noticed, Trump's kind of laid off on her. He hasn't.
Well, I have my own suspicions about that.
Yeah.
I think Nikki Haley is running specifically to divide up the Republican non-Trump vote to help Trump.
It's a very good idea. I mean, it's very Jersey Cityan of you, because
we saw how Trump got the nomination in 2016. It was by having so many other people that there was no united vote against him.
Yep.
He only got about 30% of the vote in the primary states before it was determined he was going to be the nominee. And that's because everybody else was dividing up the votes. I think Nikki Haley is running specifically to get as many bodies into the field as possible that aren't Donald Trump.
Makes a lot of sense.
To divide up the non-Trump vote.
And evidence of that is she hasn't taken on Trump by name and not really cast any aspersions on him.
And he's not saying anything about her.
No, that's the key tip.
And we know she called him the day before she announced that she was running for president.
Yes, he did make a snide remark and put it on Truth Social that he played her voice stating that, if Donald Trump runs, I'm not running. And his thing was, I guess she changed her mind.
They chatted, and then she announced she's running for president.
Yeah.
I think she's running specifically to help Donald Trump,
So she
can get the VP spot.
You think she has that lean and hungry look? She's Cassius and Julius Caesar.
I don't trust a word out of Nikki Haley's mouth.
No, you can't. You can't. You can't jump off the Trump Express chain the way she did. She realized where that was heading. That was heading to a train wreck, and she got off. And then she said all the right things. I don't know. I guess she's been prepping for this race since she did leave the administration. Now,
is there anything else actually interesting on the Republicans? I mean, we mentioned Sununu. I think if he were to jump in, I'm not sure if he would, but interesting as in we could actually see them going somewhere. Not interesting in the Marjorie Taylor Greene category of we would love that because we could talk about how stupid she is all the time.
the clown show that she would bring.
Which, by the way, how stupid is she?
Well, she's definitely, I don't know. I mean, the sad fact of the matter is, who votes for her? What kind of district is it?
We have to look at that district.
It just amazes me.
My favorite is that she said the other day we need a national divorce, which sounds an awful lot like calling for secession.
Absolutely.
Separating red states from blue states. But what state is she a representative from?
A blue state.
Yeah, Georgia, which has voted for Joe Biden and has 2 Democratic senators. I guess that makes it a blue state. So,
well, at least, at the very least, a purple state, but they're certainly not a red state anymore.
So maybe that's our way to get rid of Marjorie Taylor Greene. We'll endorse her plan.
Maybe Trump will look for Herschel Walker to be his running mate.
Yeah, because he was so qualified.
Yes, and he's being investigated because there's a little bit of a kerfuffle with how he spent his campaign money. Allegedly, he portioned some of that money for himself. I guess business expenses. So maybe.
Now, of course, we haven't brought up the person who already is, according to his resume, probably he's been president for about 45 years already, and that, of course, is George Santos.
Yes, we haven't brought him up. George Santos. Isn't this ironic?
The greatest president in history, I think his resume says.
Yes, yes. I did hear him being interviewed yesterday.
After he won the Super Bowl.
He was asked, what high schools did you attend? And now that we don't know that he never went to college. He said he attended
that volleyball scholarship didn't work out for.
2 public schools in New York, which he would not name. And then basically he went to a private school for a couple of months, but he got his New York City Board of Education issued GED. So he has a GED that, he passed the test. And he was awarded a high school diploma. You can't.
He says. I mean, we can't even believe that.
You can't make it up. You can't make it up. I think there's so many people that are looking into his past that if he didn't have a GED, the minimum, he would they would be bringing this up. But
I mean, stealing puppies from the Amish was pretty good.
God Almighty, you can't make it's
like
just
a Mad Libs of.
This is it's surreal. It's surreal. If the world has gone mad, and it would be so refreshing if a guy like Sununu, and I actually could conceivably see another sane person like Larry Hogan run, but I don't know if they have the wherewithal to get in the race, raise the money, and then subject themselves to the barrage that's going to be coming their way. And it'll be interesting, the first debate, which is this August. What takes place on that debate stage. I think by that time, of course, DeSantis will be announced. So it'll be interesting to see what actually transpires.
You don't think he's going to ultra slow play it like Michael Bloomberg, who made a terrible miscalculation?
I think he'd be a fool because he's actually suffered already by not announcing. He's given the field, he's given Trump a wide lane. Let's put it that way. Although. Trump really hasn't done many rallies or stops.
No.
That circus in Ohio, giving out Trump
Well, he has to sell, trading cards and things. And
oh, gosh.
hand out water.
Yeah. And, the looming specter is if the Republican Party ever decided to abandon Trump, he's running. He's running basically because he can use his third party status as a grift to basically churn money.
Well,
So,
he already said that
Yeah.
he'll support the Republican nominee if it's him.
yeah, if it's him. If it's him. You can't. Well, he did similar in
He said the same thing in
2016.
2016.
And
So-
then when he finally did say that he would support whoever it was, I mean, it was a fait accompli. But let's look at the Democrats. Let's look at Joe Biden. Let's look at.
All right, so we discussed this a couple months ago,
Yep.
immediately following Election Day, and we both kind of were on the same page then that we think Biden's going to run for re-election. Are we still on that same page? I still think so.
I agree with you. I think he is. That he was a little reluctant to talk about it gave me pause that he was looking at his own mortality at 80 years old. And truthfully, I think he's in decent shape for an 80-year-old. I should be that kind of shape when I'm 80. But I would hope that the Democratic Party would have a deeper bench, and I think that there are other candidates, but none of them is going to basically get in.
Yeah, we'll talk about their bench in a moment. I don't think it's as deep as it probably should be.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But there are people there. There are potential there for a number of people that we can talk about. But Biden's got something that Donald Trump didn't have. He has a record, basically, to run on. He's gotten a lot of stuff done. And I think ultimately, if the economy does rebound by the time of the election, I think he's in a very good position. The only problem is, can he stand up to don't forget, when he ran again in 2020, his approach was more like Rose Garden-esque than anything else.
Yeah.
COVID had basically taken the rallies and everything else away, except for, the COVID rallies.
He's going to have to actually campaign.
He's going to have to
this time.
campaign. And is he up to the rigors of that? Because it is demanding. You see, look, if you listen to Donald Trump's speeches now, they're lackluster. There's not a lot of energy there. He's a 70, how old is he? 75? 78 years old. And he's definitely slowed down. I mean, a great deal.
76?
I think he's
46 he was born, so he's
46.
76.
He's 76.
Yeah.
And by the time 224 comes around, he's 78.
Cindy Salazar, please come to the main office.
Yeah, he, W. Bush, and Clinton were all born in the same year, 46. So they're 76
46.
years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you, it'll be would that be? I think that has to be would be the two oldest men ever to run for president.
Well, it already was when they faced each other last time.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. I mean, I would hope that Biden thinks about it, but I think his advice.
I know this is morbid and perhaps cruel to say, but Donald Trump literally does not believe in exercise.
Oh, no.
And he eats like a teenager.
Right.
And he's 76 years old.
Yeah, I mean, those arteries, like, it's amazing that they're still chugging along. Biden looks leaner. I've seen him ride a bicycle. I mean, if the guy can ride a bicycle at 80 years old, God bless him. I think he's possessed of a little more energy. I mean, but the truth of the matter is, in a 76-year-old and an 80-year-old, the mental acuity is not always there. Let's put it that way. It is diminishing. They have to surround themselves with good people.
Man, woman, person, camera, TV. Wasn't that the his mental acuity test that showed he was the ultra genius of all time? Donald Trump?
Yeah. But who was it? The Surgeon General, Ronnie, whatever. He's now a congressman in Texas.
Ronnie Jackson.
Oh yeah, he could live to be 100. Oh my God. Take his medical license away.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV, which is my wife's grandfather, who's 92, just took one of those acuity tests, and the 5 words are not supposed to be related to each other at all on the acuity test. So clearly, Dr. Jackson gave him a simplified version Donald Trump.
Of course he did.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. That's 3 words that are related to each other, and then 2 words that are related to each other. That's not what's supposed to happen on the acuity test. It's supposed to be 5 completely unrelated words. So,
Well,
and yeah, good job, Donald Trump. You were able to identify a picture of an elephant and a picture of
well, that's good. That's
of a
good for
camel.
Republican. I wonder if we can identify a donkey.
and look at a clock and say what time it was on the clock, which is the stuff that's on the acuity test.
Joe, let's talk about that bench for the Democrats.
Yeah, so I'll start with one, which is, we had this discussion, a similar one, again, back in November after Election Day, and we threw a bunch of names out there. And one of our listeners, Hiram, who's actually a former student here, who unfortunately moved away, and I know listened, so hey, Hiram, hope you're doing well in California. But Hiram emailed us to throw in another name, which we had forgotten, and it was just a plain brain fart by all of us to forget it, which is Gretchen Whitmer.
Oh yeah,
the governor of Michigan.
I think we did.
We didn't mention her, and we should have, because she's
absolutely
a successful governor of a swing state. Has good liberal bona fides in her resume. Won by a very comfortable margin in Michigan, again in November.
I think she's definitely on that list of potential candidates. I just had the pleasure of listening to an interview with the Governor Wes Moore of Maryland.
And we brought him up last time because he had just been elected last time when we talked about this.
Impressive speaker. Former businessman.
He's an all-around impressive person.
Former military man.
Yeah.
He was. I think Biden was down in Baltimore speaking, and he was on the platform with him, and he was interviewed after. I think he's an up-and-comer.
I think if you were designing a candidate in a lab, you would get Wes Moore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Resume that he has,
and he's got a great smile.
So I mean. We'll see. I don't know. Maybe 2024 is a little early for that.
He's young enough to sit this out.
Of course, I would have said that about Obama in 2008, that it was a little bit early for him.
Sometimes you go past your due date, because think about
well,
this.
That's true. I mean,
who was more popular?
I said that about DeSantis the last time we talked about this.
I said that in 2012 about Chris Christie.
Then you better do it this time because he can't sit out because you don't know if he'll have this same mojo in 4 years.
Christie had the best mojo in 2012. I think if he had gotten into that race, I think that race would have. He had a shot to become president. I totally believe that because he is a good speaker. He's
that was before some of the stuff about him.
When all that stuff hit the fan in the second term in office.
Right. I mean, Chris Christie was fairly easily reelected here in New Jersey.
And he
would not have been reelected again if he was running again.
and that's why they did the poll in New Jersey, and it didn't even register that 3% of New Jerseyans would support his candidacy.
Right. There is a shelf life to candidates.
Yep.
As hard as that is to believe when we're nominating 80-year-olds and 76-year-olds and recycling the same nominees from last year.
Well, I don't think age has a factor in that as much as...
But recycling the same people we just had last time.
Timing is everything. You basically, once it's the time, it's the readiness factor with kids with learning. When you're ready to learn, when the conditions are right. And if you pass by...
This is why if DeSantis wants to be president, he has to do it now.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, you know what? There's another thing too. I mean, think about it. If DeSantis makes the mistake of not getting involved in this election, who knows what his political future will be in 4 years?
Right.
From there. Now, definitely, at 44 years old, he's young enough. But a lot of things happen between.
A lot of things happen in 4 years.
In 4 years, that could make you passe. Besides the two I mentioned, I know I'm going to mention somebody who's controversial. I think he's a little further down the bench. But the governor of California, I believe...
I brought him up last time, Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom, very
I think
telegenic.
he's a very solid person.
Speaks real well. California, believe it or not, I just came back from $4.99 a gallon of gas.
Oh, I know. My
But
buddy is in California. I ask him all the time.
But
about
the
gas
truth of
prices.
the matter is that California, if it was a country, has the fourth strongest economy in the world. You know, I mean, it's he's done a lot of good things out
I'm
there.
going to repeat myself from a few months ago. But if there were a Democratic primary right now, I think Gavin Newsom does very well on the coast. I'm not sure how well he does
No,
in the rest of
in
the
the
country.
middle America or the South.
Now, of course, the coasts are Democratic country, generally speaking. But you do need a little bit of that middle of the country too.
He's also
How's
carrying,
Gavin Newsom doing the Rust Belt? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe too slick, maybe.
You know, that area that the Democrats we know have to win a presidential election.
Let's put it this way. He looks like a president, like Robert Redford
Yeah,
looked
like the candidate.
senator,
Yeah.
the candidate in the movie,
Yeah.
the candidate. But
Again, if you had like a mold of a,
you know who that person
nominee.
was modeled after? Remember Senator Tunney from California, the heavyweight boxer Gene Tunney. He was either the son or the grandson of you know, and a good friend of Teddy Kennedy. He came from that ilk. Good-looking guy, very telegenic. I'm sure he had presidential aspirations at one time, and I believe that Teddy Kennedy's being on the scene blocked him.
All right, we're going to take a little break here. We're going to come back and we're going to look back at people who it looked like they might be on track to be president, and then something went horribly wrong one way or the other. So stick around. We'll be right back here on Wigs for Wigs. All right, we are back here on Wigs for Wigs, and we're going to take a trip down memory lane now at people that at one time were seen as presidential frontrunners for their party and either wound up crashing and burning in the primaries and never even got the nomination, or the general election went horribly wrong for them, because there's been quite a few, even in recent memory, who were entering the race looking like unstoppable frontrunners, like a Ron DeSantis is looked at if Donald Trump was not running right now. And then we don't even remember them now other than as kind of punchlines in the political scene. So, you know, one that immediately comes to mind for me from the time that I was first getting engaged in politics is Howard Dean.
Oh my gosh.
If I asked you, I mean, I didn't tell you we were going to discuss this, but what's the first thing that comes to mind when I say Howard Dean?
Oh, that scream.
That scream.
Oh.
Yeah!
That scream. I think
We're going to go to Washington. We're going to go, yeah!
it was a maniacal scream.
For anybody who doesn't remember, I know a lot of our listeners are young. A lot of my former students listen to the podcast. Howard Dean was the governor of Vermont, correct?
Yes.
So he entered the presidential primaries in 2004 for the Democratic Party. Had a very surprise showing in Iowa, you know, the early states that vote, which kind of jumped him into the frontrunner status for the Democratic Party in Iowa and New Hampshire. And then he had this bizarre speech
Ramesh, please come to the main office.
in New Hampshire, I think it was, right after the
Yes.
primary there, where he talked about, we're going to go to this state and this state, and then he did this just absolutely absurd sounding yelp scream.
Yes, it was sad. It was sad.
And that was the end of Howard Dean as a frontrunner.
Yes, but he went on to have a great career as the chairman of
He
the
did. He
national
became the chairman of the Democratic Party and did well there,
Yes, he did.
but never became president.
He put the apparatus together to elect Obama as president. You
Yeah.
know, did a good job with that. Better as an organizer than as a
Yeah, which of course is not unique in history. There's a lot of
No.
people that's true of. It's just, here was a guy, you know, you went to February of 2004 and everybody was saying, oh, there's Howard Dean. He's going to be the Democratic nominee for president now. And then, yeah!
Now, what was Giuliani 08 or 12? Rudy Giuliani.
Giuliani was, I think he tried both times.
He tried both times, but was the front runner in the second time.
12.
in 12 and disintegrated by not even winning a primary.
No, not even coming close.
Not
to
even
a single
coming
primary.
close.
I don't think he even came top 5 in any
No,
primaries.
I mean, and by that time, he was the sane Rudy.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have the hair dye dripping in perspiration. He was still America's mayor, still basically on a high from his performance during 9/11. You know.
Well, who was it who said about Rudy Giuliani that the way he speaks is to say a subject, a verb, and then 9/11?
Yeah,
that was
it.
that was his.
Another. I mean, and to descend into madness. You know,
Jon
that
Stewart.
would
I don't
be
remember who said that originally about Rudy Giuliani, but
might have been, but another complete flame out, and then
yeah,
sadly,
again, was going in looking like an unstoppable front runner, America's mayor.
think about it, Giuliani, somebody named Giuliani in the Rust Belt, in the South, in the West. You know, how the heck are they going to get elected? Plain and simple. You know,
Yeah.
and he was sane then. You know, he was sane then. Only working on 2 marriages at the time, or maybe 3. I'm not sure. You know, but that was Haley's comet. Came and went.
One who was before my time, but was an undeniable front runner at a moment in the campaign, and then things went horribly wrong, was Gary Hart.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember about
Yeah.
Gary Hart?
Well, Gary was the face of. Gary was Bill Clinton before there was a Bill Clinton, and unfortunately,
84, I think, was Gary Hart.
I think it was because it would have
That wound
been
up being
against
Mondale?
Mondale
Yeah.
wound up being Mondale. He had a bright future. He was a good-looking guy. Sadly, he had an infidelity problem
Yeah.
that was was photographed and videotaped,
Yeah.
and there was no way around it. You know, and I'm sure that his wife hit him in the head with a rolling pin a few times, and that went his presidential nomination and his political aspirations for the rest of his young career, because he was still a young man.
Yeah.
That was over very quickly. I'll tell you someone else too who was a front runner in 1960, Hubert Humphrey.
Yeah.
And then Kennedy annihilated him in the Midwest. And what Kennedy did was that he basically let it be known that, you know, Kennedy had a war record in World War II as a vet. Hubert Humphrey was not in the Army
Right.
during World War II. And the Kennedy people made a lot of hay out of that. And actually, not only did they...
It's so interesting how important that was for that stretch of time.
Yeah.
Because just looking now, I mean, again, there's a lot that's been written about this. I've read a lot about it. You know, we have not elected a veteran at all since George Bush Sr.
Yep.
If you look, you know, for a long time in American history, having a military record was a positive
Prerequisite, yeah.
running for president.
Yep.
But if you look back since 1988, when George H.W. Bush was elected, at each election, 1992, Bush had a war record. Clinton did not. Clinton won the election. 1996, Bob Dole was a war hero. Clinton had no war record. Clinton won. 2000, I mean, Gore had like some, what was he, a journalist
Gore
who
was,
covered some war area or something?
Vietnam. He was in Vietnam as a journalist.
Yeah, and
He worked for Stars and Stripes, if I'm not
right,
mistaken.
so, I mean, something resembling a
Yeah.
record. W, of course, kept South Texas safe from the Viet Cong. W won. 2004, John Kerry. Now,
He
of
had a
course,
war
he had
record.
his, Vietnam vets against the war record also,
Yes, he
but
did.
he had a war record. W did not. He won. 2008, my guy McCain, obviously a war hero.
Yep.
Barack Obama, no military service. And Obama wins.
Right.
So if we go back since we last elected a veteran, we've had a number of elections where the person who had a legitimate war record, like full-on war heroes, Bob Dole, John McCain, have lost to people with no military record at all. It's just interesting that there were stretches in American history where that was almost a prerequisite to become president. It's what killed Humphrey against Kennedy.
Yep.
And yet, in recent times, I don't know if it's a post-Vietnam thing, but
Well, you know,
that doesn't seem to matter to the American public.
It might recycle back in now. You know, I think that there are a number of people who have military records, and we mentioned Westmore.
Yeah.
You know, and the congressman from Massachusetts, a Blue Dog Democrat, Seth.
Oh, yes.
I can't think of his last name. Another one, a former Marine.
Yes, I know who you're talking about.
And I'll tell you somebody on the horizon from New Jersey who's also got a war record, Mikey Sherrill.
Yeah.
You know,
That's true.
Very impressive woman.
That's true.
I think
she has a significant future in the
my
Democratic
personal
Party.
opinion is she'll be the next governor of the state.
I can see that.
If she decides to run. You know, and again, a mom.
Yeah, helicopter pilot. You know, in combat, it's pretty good bona fides. Yeah, I mean, going back to the national figures in the Democratic Party, somebody like Tammy Duckworth also.
Tammy
also
Duckworth,
likes.
gosh, definitely a hero who sacrificed a lot.
All right, let's. You were talking about Humphrey. I don't know. I cut you off. I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to say about Hubert Humphrey.
That I was proud as punch to remember Hubert Humphrey.
I'm gonna throw another name. I'm just gonna throw a couple names at you and see if you remember these names. Okay, because these are people who sought presidential nominations, got a lot of news attention at the moment that they were, and let's see what we remember. Michelle Bachmann.
Oh my God! Oh my God! She flamed out. Yes. She would have fit right in with today's Republican Party.
Yeah, she kind of was a precursor to this modern
clown car
MGT wing of the Republican Party. She was a congresswoman from Minnesota, was it? Yeah. Who just had some absolutely bizarre statements. Yeah, and she tried in 2012, that same Rudy Giuliani election. Got a lot of attention. You know, most of it was negative. She wasn't really a front runner, but she was somebody who got a lot of attention running for president. And then flamed out completely and lost her congressional seat, I think after that. It's interesting that that's the same time that the Tea Party was on the rise. And you had a lot of these crazies first come into Congress. And yet she was so crazy that for that time, she was too much to bear.
But she was the minority, sadly.
They're still a minority. At the time, she was too crazy for the crazies to bear. Now, she would fit right in with some of these people that are there.
Good afternoon, Hudson Catholic. Teachers, make sure students are...
Okay, just two last names here. One, I mean, you can't bring up people that were front runners to get a nomination and wound up not getting it without bringing up Hillary Clinton in 2008. Hillary went into 2008
absolutely
seeing it as almost offensive for any other Democrat to even seek the nomination, like it was hers to have.
She thought it was
and then lost to Obama in that primary. But the last name I wanted to throw at you, let's just see if you remember her. I swear I'm not picking on women. It just occurred to me that I'm bringing up a bunch of women all of a sudden.
During Women's Month.
Oh, I know. I'm so horrible. Joe Biden, I mean, this isn't somebody who ever ran for president, but they did run for the Senate. And Joe Biden should have had some experience with dealing with the crazies. What do you remember about Christine O'Donnell?
Oh, my God. The witch. She was a practicing witch.
This is...
I mean, she was an actual witch.
She was an actual witch.
Yes, and you couldn't make it up. I mean, and I think it gave Biden a lot of experience in terms of running the next time for president.
This was in 2012-ish, I guess, so when Biden was running for Senate?
No, that's right. Biden was running for Senate, so maybe it was like 2004, in that ballpark, because he had been reelected and he ran as the vice president in 2008. But I often wondered what became of her. And
no, you know what? It was for Chris Coons' seat. She was trying to run against Chris Coons.
Okay.
So I think it was around 2012, 2010.
Yeah.
But she was she was a witch. And,
what do you think she's doing now? I think she ran away to the circus.
I think she probably works at Newsmax or something.
Maybe.
That's the same thing, right? Newsmax Circus.
Yeah.
But she was not a front runner by any means.
No.
No. Yeah, but we have had some absurd people run for things.
Yes.
But we look back here, we look ahead a little bit. There are people right now we see as very legitimate candidates. Their shelf life might be limited. That's what this last section was meant to say to all of you. If you look at a Rudy Giuliani, Chris Christie, Gary Hart, Howard Dean, Hillary Clinton in 2008, I mean, these are people that thought they were going to cruise to a nomination, and it simply didn't happen for them for one reason or another. So you don't sit it out until later. If this is your moment, what if 2004 was open for the Republicans? If W wasn't running for re-election, that could have been Rudy's moment.
Well,
with 9/11 more fresh in people's mind.
I mean, it wasn't a good time, with the war in Iraq, the second war in Iraq.
Well, right, but I'm saying 2012, his shelf life might have been over by that point.
Yep.
We looked at him as a front runner. He clearly wasn't.
No, thank God.
So, these people who are sitting on the sideline weighing, should I do it this time, should I do it that time? I don't think you should wait. That's my personal opinion.
No, Joe, he who hesitates is lost. So I guess the coming
As
weeks, we should have
the baseball manager, I think it was Sparky Anderson, once said, you don't save a pitcher for tomorrow because tomorrow might rain. You use your best today. So I think you got to put your best forward today if you're somebody thinking about running for president.
Yep, absolutely. Well, it is interesting. The next few weeks are going to bear out more in terms of the gentleman from Florida, the governor from Florida, to see if he basically gets in. I know he's getting in.
He's getting in. You don't write a book at this time. You're not getting in.
When he gets in is going to be the interesting point.
Yeah.
He can't wait till the summer. You know what I mean?
No, he has to do it before the summer.
No, absolutely. I look forward to
Before
seeing
the
him on
media
that.
doldrums of the summer, he has to do it.
I look forward to seeing him on that debate stage in August.
I don't. I don't, but I know what you mean, but I don't look forward to listening to Ron DeSantis talk about anything. Because he's going to talk about history, and, well, he has a problematic record on talking about history.
Well, I want to see him defend that record as governor of Florida and see how that plays in the rest of the country.
Well, we'll see. He's getting in. You can bet on it. I'll place a bet with any of you out there listening that Ron DeSantis is joining the race sometime soon. So, again, let us know your thoughts out there in listener land. We can be reached as always at Wigs for Wigs. That is WIGSFORWHIGS @gmail.com. I do read these emails. You heard me shout out Hiram, our listener today, who emails us quite frequently. So we always love hearing from you. Let us know your thoughts. And we'll be here soon again on another episode of Wigs for Wigs. Take care, everybody.